Hello there, my name is Adam Forbes. I am the host of the Corporate Escapology podcast and the author of Corporate Escapology, the book, which, by the way, is out on July the 2nd. Today, my guest is Claire Perry-Louise. Claire is a community builder. She runs her own community called Like-Hearted Leaders, which is a group of entrepreneurs that meet on a Friday and tackle different issues about running your own business and provide real support and advice to one another. But she wasn't always a community builder. She actually trained as a lawyer, practiced as a solicitor for 15 odd years, and a chance film on YouTube made her change her career forever as she went into community marketing. And so we'll hear from Claire today about her more purposeful path that she's followed out of corporate and into something that she enjoys an awful lot more. Let's meet Claire.
Hi, Claire. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Corporate Escapology podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Adam. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Very good. Right, let's just start. So you were a solicitor. You started your career as a solicitor. So, I mean, there's not many more sort of corporate-y kind of environments as being a solicitor. So what led you into that career path?
I think ultimately I went down that career path because it was a path, quite frankly. And now looking back and being an entrepreneur for the last 10 years or so, and all the things I've come across and the uncertainties and not really knowing which way to go and all of those things, I can see how at the age of whatever I was, 22, 23, it just was a kind of easy, you just kept following the steps, so to speak. And I did actually try and break out of that because originally I only studied law because I wanted to go into hotel management. But my dad said, Claire, hotel management's great, but you can use law for everything. So why not do a legal degree? And then when you've done that, you can decide what to do. So I followed my instructions as a good girl, as I was. And I went and did law at university. And then if you're going to go down that path, there is there's certain steps you have to take. And I actually stopped after 3 years and took a year out. And I said, right, I'm not going to do that. And so then I went and got a job which was a place called Friends Provident at the time. And I moved into pensions advice or some such thing. I know. And I had real no idea what pension advice was. And actually, I was interviewed for the same position twice. And I didn't get it the first time because I said something about I didn't like maths, which I hate maths. And the second time they changed the job title and I went for the interview and I knew not to say I didn't like maths and I got the job and then I hated it. I know.
Quick learner.
Exactly. So I do know how to get jobs. But the point was, as I went out on a Saturday night and I got chatting to this guy and he said, what do you do? And I said, I want to work at Friends Provident. I said, I was going to be a solicitor, but I decided, I'm going to go out into the world. And he looked at me and he said, Claire, he says, if you've got the opportunity to go and learn and be a solicitor, I think perhaps you should go and do that while you've got the opportunity. He said, what are you playing at Friends Provident? And I thought, well, I think he worked there actually. I can't remember.
They're usually the most honest.
Yeah. So I went home and I remember the Sunday I said to my dad and I said, Dad, I'm going back to be a lawyer. And he was like, great. And that was that.
What? So you've completed all your studies. Did you start it and leave it?
No. I did 2 different degrees and I took a gap year between 2 degrees. And then you have to go back and do a legal diploma and then a training contract.
Yeah. I see.
So I
went back and did the training contract. I mean, it's years, isn't it?
Every year.
And were you thinking throughout those years, this is definitely what I want to do? Or did you have a sinking feeling thinking, oh my gosh, this is not the right path for me?
Why do people choose to be a solicitor, for example? Now, my dad, for example, he wanted me to be a solicitor because during his generation, he saw that being a solicitor was a safe job. It was a job that had opportunities for a lot of money to come in, those kind of things he wanted for me because I was his child, I am his child, and he wants me to be safe and secure in the world. And he saw it as a good pathway for me. And then I think there are people who, and I think perhaps there's a lot of people who go, right, where can I bring in, where can I bring in the most money? What can I do? And there's certain jobs that are seen as the way to live abundant lifestyles or get significance as a person in the world. Like, I know that, for my dad, I think it was a thing for him that he'd say, oh, my daughter's a solicitor. I think it gave him some kind of state. Yeah. Which I think in today's world, things have changed a lot. But I wonder how connected we are to our purpose and how connected we are to why we are actually making the choices we're making when we're in our early 20s. And, I've always, since being a child, I've wanted to help and look after my brothers and my sisters. And, I've always been very around, wanted to love people and make sure they're okay. And that's kind of inherent in my nature. And so I guess through being a solicitor, the aspects of the job that I really enjoyed were, I'd work in wills and trusts and probate, and I'd go and see a client who'd lost their spouse. And I was ultimately there to get them to sign the paperwork, but they didn't know how to write a check at the time because their husband had always done it.
Yeah.
And I'd spend time helping them, but I wouldn't actually charge that to the file, which was me actually being, a bad lawyer because I'm supposed to charge that. But there's that human element. And I think, where are we missing the trick? Why are we not bringing humanness into corporate life, into the people? Because ultimately, whatever business we're in, it's a business between humans. It's human to human. So even if you're in commercial property, you're dealing with other humans. And I think that's where the magic comes, when we can start looking beyond the practicalities and the process and we're in here to turn out work like a lot of solicitors do. And actually, who's the person behind? And if we can build more engagement into teams, for example, ultimately that will serve the firm much better. But I never saw that demonstrated when I was there. I just never did.
So how long were you practicing as a solicitor?
I started in 2002, I think. And I think I left in 2016.
Crikey, so quite a long time. And how were you feeling in that time, maybe towards the end of it? Had you started to think this will not be forever and I will do something else? Or had you just thought this is it and I'm going to have to sort of suck it up and find things outside of life that give me more fulfillment and joy than the work?
I made career choices that would make it as easy as possible to continue doing what I was doing. So I moved from a bigger firm to a smaller firm where you didn't have to sit at your desk for good faith and be there until 7 o'clock. I got to leave at 5:30. I found a space where the partner I worked with was much more likely to come and knock on my door and say, come on, Claire, let's go for a coffee, than sit in the office and look at files. He was more laid back, didn't really fit in to the culture of traditional solicitors, so I kind of, I think I was just lifing, I was just going through how the traditional way that life used to work out, go to university, go and train to be a solicitor, get a training contract, find a husband, have some children, carry on doing it, go part-time. I was in that kind of world until the day, until the weekend when it all transformed.
Yeah, so tell us that. I mean, that's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can put it down. You can literally mark a change by a weekend.
I can mark a change by a weekend, yes. So at the time, so I was I was a solicitor. I had 2 children. I'd had the second child. And I remember not very, very much, but I do remember just not really feeling, I felt like I kind of lost myself really at that stage. And my husband at the time said, Claire, I want you to watch this YouTube video. And I just was really thinking, I don't want to watch this YouTube video. And he kept saying to me about the YouTube video for quite a few days, like, Claire, let's watch this YouTube video. I found this YouTube video. I was like, oh. And I remember sitting on the sofa one evening, and I sat on one end of the sofa and he sat at the other end, and I was sort of like had my hand on my chin, and I was just like, oh, this blooming YouTube video. Anyway, so it starts playing. And as it starts playing out, I start watching this YouTube video, and there's a guy on stage, and he's talking about how he used to work for BT. So again, another prime example. In fact, you should probably talk to him. He used to work at BT in corporate, and one day he found himself at the bottom of the escalator in London, that he'd fallen all the way down because he was stressed and like a massive commutes and kind of blacked out or something. I'm not quite sure. He ended up taking voluntary redundancy, and then he started making money online, like quite a few years ago now, but he just started looking at this online thing, which was quite new back then. And he went on and earned millions of pounds online, did all kinds of things. And he was talking on stage about what he'd learned and what he'd earned online and how he generated traffic. And he was then offering a 3-day internet marketing seminar in London over a weekend. And he was doing these every 6 weeks, and he was teaching other people what he'd learned. So by the end of the YouTube video, I was really up for it. I was like, right, let's go on this course. Yeah. So I remember
Devon with 2 children.
Yes. So we
off to London.
Yeah, I know. So So we shipped the children off to grandma's, and
you both went.
We both went together because he was looking at the time for some kind of business that he could work for himself with. I mean, he did work for himself, but he wanted to do something else. And so off we went to London, and I was really scared at the time of traveling anywhere. And I remember being on the M25 going, oh my God, I'm on the M25. There's planes above my head. Yeah. And it was kind of crazy for me. And then I got to the hotel, which was at Heathrow Hotel. And I said, do you think we can check in when we arrived? And my husband said, I'll go and look. So I kind of locked myself in the car because obviously it's a high crime area. I just like literally leaving Devon. I'm just completely freaking out. And he went, and obviously we could check in, and we went to the seminar. And I learned all about how to build landing pages, how to do social media marketing, how to, create websites. And as I just loved it. Like the day, I just loved it from the Friday morning. I was like, this is great. And at the same time, my husband did not love it. And he was freaking out over the weekend because it wasn't what he wanted. He thought he'd found the answer.
Yeah.
So then there was this tricky space where I was in this space where I was like, wow, this is amazing. And he was thinking, what's this? But I knew I wanted to carry on. And when I left that weekend, I'd signed up for some extra mentoring. And yeah, so on the Monday I went home, I was like, right, and we've got this big manual. I was like, right, I'm going to learn about internet marketing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But the first thing that stood out to me, and this is what I think anybody who wants to leave corporate should think about, and that is, where is your excitement taking you? Like, what feels exciting? Is there anything that you think, someone mentions a book, or you come across something and you think, oh, that's exciting? Because for me, during the course, there was something about membership sites. And so membership sites are like nowadays we have lots of them, like Netflix and something like that. You pay a regular subscription. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I remember thinking, okay, well, we can put this into businesses, and then you don't have to have a one-time transaction in a business. You can have a repeating transaction, and you can build relationships over time, and surely that's going to be better. And so I started going down this rabbit hole and learning all about membership sites. I wrote a book about membership sites. I started, which please don't read now because it's a very old book. but I joined forces with the guy who ran the course, and we did some seminars together, and he would share his...
Gosh.
Do you not know all this?
Up the job, the law, the
yeah.
By then, yeah, and you just literally threw yourself into it.
Yeah, I totally did. I know. So then I started going to London on my own, and then I start flying around the world on my own, and then I just start going, and then before long, I'm at the front of these 3-day seminars, teaching people about how to make money from membership sites, running seminars, doing quite a lot. So I know. but then what happened was I realised that the membership site is purely the tool. So if you're going to have a new kitchen installed, you're not asking the kitchen person what screwdriver you're using. You're thinking like, how's it going to feel in here? How are we going to navigate this space? And so I realised that actually what's most important is about building community, and it's about building connections and relationships, and the membership site is the tool to keep those up, but really it's about community building. And I'm talking quite a lot because it's quite a long story, but then this is what that comes into it is, then I thought to myself, if you're going to build community within business, so then I'm looking back at my own career, thinking, okay, if you're going to start building relationships within business, you're going to have an amazing amazing company culture. Because if you hate being there, like I used to hate being there, am I really going to be in the right position to be building strong relationships and wanting to connect with the clients in a stronger way if I'm hating every moment I'm there? So then I went down the culture path as well and started doing things there. So that's kind of how it played out.
Right. Okay. Crikey, there's a lot in there, isn't there? Just in terms of the bravery of kind of tossing everything, in theory, tossing everything that you'd built up away and just starting afresh in a totally different field. I mean, it feels kind of high risk doing that with 2 children as well, potentially with your husband at the time also going to do something similar. I mean, did it feel terrifying, or were you it sounds now like you were totally liberated by it, but is that, looking back, or did it actually feel really scary?
Well, I think there's a few points to that. Firstly, I don't think I ever really thought about that until my best friend from university said to me, Claire, you're so brave. You just gave up everything. And I was like, oh, I said that a few years down. I didn't really even think about it like that. But the second thing was that I had, I'd been in this position where I'd met someone who had really wanted to keep our living costs down, had set up a life where we weren't heavily dependent on huge amounts of income coming. I mean, all of those aspects meant that so often I think we get stuck in places, especially in corporate jobs, where we're earning a certain amount of money, which is so high, but our living costs also match that. And so we never have any room for maneuver and there's no space.
Really
Whereas really trapped. So I was in this position where I wasn't as trapped as I might have been if we'd gone and bought a massively huge house or something like that, so I had some savings as well. But then at the same time, this whole new adventure meant that I changed a lot and I was growing too much and it didn't keep up with my husband. And so we ended up parting ways, because we just weren't the same. Well, I definitely wasn't the same person anymore.
Same person.
Yeah, which then makes the journey even harder, because then I was supporting myself and the children on my own and running a business. And I've been doing that the last 10 years and I've been financially independent the whole 10 years, but still on this journey of just trying to figure it all out, because I said being a solicitor had a pathway, and it had, like my dad said to me the other day, it's like, well, he said 2 things. One thing, he said, you're the most disappointing of all of my children, because he said, I set you up and you had a job as a solicitor and now you're not doing it. So yay me, most disappointing of them all. Perfect. My brother and sister are happy that I had that accolade. And and secondly, he's still going, just go back, no. And then I'm like, well, if I went back, Dad, I wouldn't be sitting with you now having dinner out on a Monday morning in some place in wherever we were at the time, but he's of his generation, and I'm giving him compassion for that and going, thanks, Dad. I feel great now. You told me I'm so disappointing, but I still love him,
That's hilarious.
10 years later, he's still clawing onto this idea that you're going to go back and make him proud.
I know.
Not disappoint him.
I know. Most pointing at the ball.
You were also saying in there was a lot about identity. I mean, there's like two different identities. That identity wrapped up with a solicitor. Everywhere you go, people say, "Oh, hi, Claire. What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a solicitor." There's a kind of immediate status. There's immediate sort of recognition of what a solicitor probably does or might do, to suddenly going something that's quite abstract. Not many people understood it. Maybe at that time, certainly not in as way they do now. Maybe understand it, but it would have seemed, my guess is, to a lot of people around you, like she's having a bit of a crisis. She's leaving something so stable and understood and reliable, and just flipping into something so unknown. Did you get resistance from family at the time and from friends? And
well, I guess now I've not really thought about it too much, but my family don't live near me, and then I moved out and got my own house, and so I didn't have resistance, and I wasn't receiving money from anybody to further control me. I was creating my own stuff. And so from that standpoint, I think behind the scenes, obviously, certainly my dad's freaking out. My mum doesn't understand what I do. Half the time I don't understand. So that's all right. But, like, I just think,
the client understands.
Yeah, the client understands. My community understand. They love it. It's like, but I think that probably made the transition harder, easier even. Because because I think if you're in, I think there's there's something said about relationships and who you end up marrying. I mean, I honestly feel like, from my own research, and I'm really quite into this, is around, I feel like we do marry people, especially the first time, which so often are there just to help us grow and transform, and they will trigger us, and quite often they're replicas of family members or fathers or something like that. And I feel like there is actually a book by the School of Life actually about, and it's called something like it's something about you will marry the wrong person. Now, obviously this is not saying for everybody, but I think we make choices in our early years, and I think nowadays we are getting married or making connections later on, but as opposed to then. But back when I was doing it, it'd be like, okay, this is the path, and you get married in your 20s. I didn't know who Claire was in her 20s, and my ex-husband, I still love him, and I see all the things that have helped me grow as an individual because he's triggered those things in me, and he was there perfectly to move me through. And ideally, I'd love just to us all be back to get all together. But back in the old days, you'd die in your 30s, and so it was okay to get married. But nowadays, if you're going to live to 110, are you going to be the same person? I just don't know. Yeah. And sometimes you can grow with someone and have communication with that person and really bloom together. And sometimes you have to move on. And this is the same if you're working in corporate. Like, is it still serving you? Is it still meeting your needs? Or maybe it's just a need to have income. But is it really serving you? And when do we really take stock of our lives and go, okay, let's stop. Is this relationship serving me? Is this job in corporate serving me? Is what I'm doing as an entrepreneur serving me? And I think we should go through a cycle. And I was listening to a podcast the other day about where there's some tribes or some area, I don't know where it is actually, but somewhere in the world where they go into 7-year marriages. And after 7 years, they come to the community and say, okay, let's revisit this. Are we still working well together? And then they make a new commitment for 7 years. And I think perhaps we should do that personally, but also in what we're doing. And is it aligning?
It's like sort of first dates every 7 years. You're having to sort of like say, am I going to stay with it? Yeah. And in a way, I mean, you forced it by going on that weekend course. Redundancy is one way that it gets forced as well. That sort of moment where you just say, do I want more of this or do I want something different? And if you're lucky, you get a bit of space to actually think. In most cases, we don't give ourselves that space. We're just running. The only times we get space to really wonder, is this really it? It is holidays when we just step away off that conveyor belt and ask ourselves, is this really worth it? Is this exactly what I need now? And I think you're totally right about the relationship thing. In fact, I wrote this book this morning about feeling a little bit like a relationship leaving a job, because you've invested so much into it. And there's an element of regret, I think, about what you're leaving behind, because a lot of it, you don't know what you're leaving behind. Just like a marriage, you don't know whether it's going to get better if you just hang in there. You might know deep in yourself that it's not going to get better, but you don't know for sure. So it still is this sort of sense of kind of anticipated regret or fear of anticipated regret. And I think it's enough to make many people just stay doing something they don't enjoy, or with somebody that they're not really enjoying being with anymore. And so you sort of went a bit meta in a way with all of this, and instead of just like, okay, I'm going to go and help people do culture, you actually formed this community of people. So tell us about that, and what was the journey for you to not just sort of go around and give people training and consultancy in this, but actually to form your own community?
Well, that was an interesting journey in itself, because like I said, I started doing these seminars and doing them as joint ventures with the guy who'd got experience and had successors. And it was a case of where I was learning the stuff in theory, but I hadn't got my own. And I innately felt these things around the importance of building relationships and building connections, and because community is about a set of people who've got a shared identity and have that sense of belonging. But yeah, so back in 2020, I went on an online course with the Do Lectures. And the Do Lectures they're headed up by a guy called David Hyatt, and he lives in West Wales. And the Do Lectures is pretty much like TED Talks, but he has a cowshed, and he invites 100 people a year to this event, and they get amazing speakers, and people go, like people used to go from Virgin. And he told me, or somebody told me the story, they go to this sort of 4-day event, and then they'd go home and they'd just give up their jobs at these corporates, because they're like, I found a new way. That's kind of what he's been doing. And so I ended up on an online course with him, and it ran over a 2-week period. It was around lockdown time. We'd meet up, I think 4 till 6, 5 days for 2 weeks or something. And
it's quite a commitment.
Yeah. But during those 2 weeks, I remember I wake up in the night and I thought, I need to keep these people talking. And it was a bunch of the course was called Keyboard CEO, which meant that when you work for yourself, you are in charge of doing everything. You are the CEO of your keyboard, you're doing the marketing, you're just doing everything yourself, you're creating stuff. Anyway, so I thought to myself, I need to keep these people connecting. So I contacted them at the Do Lectures, and I said, is it okay for me to keep in contact with the people and put together something? And they said, that's fine. So then I went round, and this is obviously my community skills, but I didn't really think about it at the time. But I messaged people and I connected people, and I said, would you like to carry on these conversations? And so at that time, it wasn't cool to have Zoom. Because for years and years I've been doing so much personal development. On a Saturday night I'd be on a Zoom call speaking to people in America about something, but then the pandemic came along and everyone was on Zoom. It was like, but anyway, I opened up a Zoom account and then invited people along, and we'd meet on a Thursday from 4 till 5 or something, and then on a Friday morning from 8:30 in the morning to 9:30. And I brought these people together, and then I don't really know what I did. I just created conversations around, it's very lonely, like working on your own. And I wanted people to have those connections and be able to get help, not just on a business level, but on a personal level as well, because entrepreneurship is as much about you as an individual as it is about you as a business person. In fact, it's 80%, I would say, you and the mindset, and 20% the other stuff. So I created this space for free because I wanted to do it. And then after a month, I went to both groups on the Thursday and the Friday. And the Friday group said, we want to carry on meeting every week. And so we shifted and we met every week, 8:30 in the morning. And then after 6 months or so, or less, the community came to me and said, Claire, this is so valuable. You need to start charging us for holding this space. And then it became a membership site, which is kind of funny because it's a kind of like a
hub to you.
Yes.
They came to you and said, "We want to pay."
Yes.
For this.
And then they forced me. Yeah.
Yeah, and they wanted you to run it as well. And so, just tell me a bit about like A, the kind of people that are coming to this, and B, what sort practically are you doing in those sessions? Oh, and also introduce it because it has a name now.
Yeah, so it used to be called, when I started, the unofficial keyboard CEO course, because that's what it was. It was like the unofficial. And then the thing is about building community is you need to have a shared identity. And so I came up with this name somehow called Like-Hearted Leaders, because, like I say, it is about the heart. You know, if you have a heart, you can be a leader. And I think not everybody identifies themselves as a leader, but you are a leader of your own life. And so, yes, it became Like-Hearted Leaders. It's really ultimately it's for entrepreneurs, but we have some people have other jobs and they come along. Maybe if you're a team leader, you might enjoy it as well to get some kind of support. But generally, it's people who are running their own businesses or run small teams who, I guess, if you resonate with the Do lectures and you look them up and you think this is my kind of space, you probably like my kind of space as well. So, but ultimately, it's humans in business. That's pretty much who it's about.
And when I was part of it for a while, and the thing that I always thought of, it was like what you would imagine a team meeting would be like before you actually went to one and realized there was a lot of politics and people talking over one another and different agendas driving things and people not really concentrating because they're looking at their phone all the time, wishing they were somewhere else. It's like an attentive team meeting where everyone's there because they want to be there and they're gaining something by being there. They find it valuable, so they're and it's present as well. Everybody is like there. They know it's just an hour, so it's not something that, again, like a team meeting sometimes that encroaches, and at the end you say, "Oh, we need to extend this or have this again tomorrow to finish off." It's just like time box really nice.
Yeah.
And Friday is a good time, I think, for those sorts of things to happen, aren't they? But it feels just very warm, a very warm, friendly, supportive community, which I guess is what you were setting out to build.
I mean, it's turned out I've created a very safe environment where people can be super vulnerable because I always lead in a very open way. And I think that is a great way to lead in terms of expressing your own vulnerabilities as well, because I think it allows people the space to see that that's going to be okay and it's going to be safely held. And I think that, in terms of the format, there is no format, as in I change it every week. I read the energy, what's going on in that room. And I have done this for teams. I've worked with organizations before. I've worked with the Southwest Police, did a team thing for them. I think it's just about thinking about, if you're on a team meeting or wherever you are, you're dealing with humans, and every human in that space has got something valuable to contribute. And that, if you start at that as a baseline, then I think, and then you can lead from that space. It's not like I lead it, but I'm just one of the people there. I'm just creating space for people to shine, I guess, and to connect deeply with other people. And a couple of years ago, we created a book together called On a Friday.
I was just looking at it, actually.
Put it there. Yeah, there you go. On a Friday, look. On a Friday.
On a Friday.
On a Friday.
Great stories of all these people that belong to the community. Beautifully
yes, beautifully put together.
Illustrated too.
But it's a great book because it really tells the stories of the members of our community. And the thing that's great about it is you read a story in there, and it might just be one story in there, but then you're thinking, oh, that feels like me, or I connect with that story. And then you don't feel so alone anymore. And so I think that's what I try to do with Like-Hearted Leaders. But it's also quite hard to explain, because one of the members said a couple of weeks ago, it's like Like-Hearted Leaders is like magic. I love it so much, and it's like magic. And how do you sell magic? I mean, you can't really feel what it's like until you're in there. But has been I mean, that was 4 years ago. There's still members who've been coming for 4 years, and it blows me away. I'm like, how can they still be coming after 4 years?
Yeah. Well, you know the answer. They're finding it valuable.
It's because they feel that sense of belonging, that thing.
Yeah. Well, as you say, that loneliness of, doing this every day by yourself, to know that you only need to get to Friday before you're going to be with people that get you and understand and empathize and can support and help, give you advice as well.
Yeah.
I mean, people are asking advice, aren't they, in those calls too? They're asking, I'm dealing with this, can you help? And people then have calls afterwards where they just one-on-one get together again. So you're not going to be lonely for long, I suppose. That's why you stay.
Yeah.
So what do you do outside of LHL then? So what do you do do you take what you're doing there and the other things that you've been doing and share them with businesses?
Well, I have been going through a transition period lately, and I have been working out exactly where I want to go with the business. And it's actually moving into, so last year I was looking at working with law firms and about looking at the human behind the lawyer. And it was kind of going down this pathway because I think that I know lawyers are extremely burnt out and stressed. And so I was going down that route, and I was sitting with that for a while. And now I am at the moment at the beginning of something I'm so excited about. And it's so new in terms of it unfolding. But I am bringing, I've got a new business partner, and we are bringing something into the world. We're birthing this new project, working with high performance teams. And what we are looking at doing is, through the combination of breathwork and building community in our own unique manner, is creating this environment where individually you can regulate yourself and your nervous system. And you also have formed the connections, because leadership is a very lonely space to be. It's like working with intact leadership teams to build the connections and the relationships and all of those things that will make them better as high performance tools, but also them all be able to regulate themselves within their body. Because if you're burning out, you're not performing, and we're just not looking at this enough. And so my business partner, she's done a lot of work around, and she's trained specifically in burnout. She knows all about the physiology in the body. She teaches breath work and how we use that. And so combining our knowledge, we're sort of birthing this new project, and we don't know yet, but it's all that
sounds super exciting. That's super exciting. There's so a couple of things strike me there as well. One is just that freedom compared to when you were in the law, where you're just doing the law, the freedom you've got to be able to try things, explore things, do things, and then not do them, or do them and keep them running, find different ways that you can keep them running. That freedom that you've got now is so different from what you had before.
Like, one of my core values, one of the things that I hold above everything is freedom. And I am really hard, as you well know, like I'm so hard to hold down to an appointment time, because somehow in my head, it's a mental thing like, oh my gosh, at that time, I could be doing something else. And if I commit to this, it's like a massive deal for me. So I have to have automatic booking systems, for example, because otherwise I'm just freaking out going, oh my gosh. And it's like that freedom point really is something that sits with me. And I think I'm unemployable now, because I'd just be so like held down by it. I'm just like, this is not good.
To finish up, I just want to go back to, I want you to go back to the girl that was thinking about the law, or not necessarily wishing to, but was being driven down that pathway. Would you do it again? Do you think? Was it part of the story of Claire that you went through that, or do you think, God, I wish I'd just gone into hotel management or whatever it was and just followed my dream and got to know me earlier, maybe?
I believe that every single experience, every single person you come across, all the good, all the bad, is is there ultimately to take you to wherever I am today. And so I wouldn't go back necessarily and change it, because I think it's given me, it has taken me on the steps I needed to get to here. So I kind of got that perspective on everything. And I wasn't ready for anything I wasn't ready for until it came across, until I watched that YouTube video, or until I took that course. And I think that when things don't work out, it's because there's something greater waiting for you. So I think that if you work in corporate today and you think, I wish I'd never gone down this path, you did go down that path. And there are lessons in it. Like in relationships, if a relationship doesn't work out, where are the lessons in that? It's never really about the other person. It's about you. Like, what are they reflecting to you within this relationship? Or if you're having a difficult time at work, what is that reflecting to you? You know, if you're stressed at work, okay, well, where am I not taking time out? And where am I not being true to myself, perhaps? So I don't think we make any wrong decisions. I just think we just make decisions and they move us further along. So I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change my marriage. I wouldn't change my jobs. I wouldn't change anything, really.
Great. Well, that's a lovely point to leave that. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Lovely to talk to you today, Claire.
Thank you for having me, Adam. It's been a pleasure. Take care.